Broadcasting from the Unshackled Studios in Melbourne. This is WilmsFront, brought to you by theunshackled.net. Now here's Tim Wilms.
Hello everyone and welcome to this week's WilmsFront on this Wednesday, the 24th of March 2021. We are live on the WilmsFront YouTube and DLive channels, as well as on the enhanced software Entropy, where throughout the show you can ask a question or send through a super chat. It is 8:30 p.m. here in Melbourne, where it is less than 2 days until masks will no longer be part of our culture. As Dan Andrews once said, as the state government is no longer going to mandate them in retail settings, but will still be mandatory on public transport, ride sharing, vehicles, aged care facilities and hospitals. Apart from masks, Victoria will have the same relaxed restrictions as New South Wales, which were announced today by Gladys Berejiklian. So in both Victoria and New South Wales, when restrictions are relaxed next, private home visitor limits will be expanded to 100 per day. Outdoor gatherings will be expanded to 200 people, and all businesses, no matter what industry they are involved in, will be under the 1 person per 2 square meter rule. There will be a greater enforcement of the government mandated QR checking code system for contact tracing purposes in both states. Victoria is going to move to the New South Wales model of having a dedicated, either all businesses having a dedicated government app or government API attached to their QR codes. These restrictions are because both states have had over a month of without any locally acquired COVID cases. Victoria has kind of cheated in that regard, given that the hotel quarantine program that Victoria resumed was suspended again after the Holiday Inn cluster, which led to the 5-day circuit breaker lockdown. Acting Premier James Merlino has said he'll comment later in the week about whether Victoria or how Victoria will begin receiving international travellers again. They have set up more acquired more hotels for hotel quarantine in the CBD, as their quarantine cabins down at Avalon Airport won't be ready until October. Also this week, Australia's COVID vaccine rollout is beginning to surge, with the local AstraZeneca vaccine now being distributed to those in what is known as the Priority 1B group, so those over 70 and adults with pre-existing medical conditions. This was after the locally produced AstraZeneca doses, which are being manufactured at the CSL plant in Broadmeadows, were approved by our Therapeutic Goods Administration. So apparently all those international concerns about the AstraZeneca vaccine regarding blood clots and deaths appear to have just evaporated after a week of alarm and suspension of the vaccine rollout. But overall, it's clear that we Australians, particularly we Victorians, are in a much better way in terms of our freedoms than we were 6 months ago under the Dan Andrews Stage 4 lockdown police state, with Victoria Police brutally suppressing and crushing any dissent. 6 months later, Dan is nowhere to be seen after he has fallen down the stairs. Even his social media page, namely Facebook, has gone quiet for the past 10 days, which is strangely unusual for him and will just fuel more rumors about the true nature of his slip down the stairs. And also Victoria Police, they at the last Worldwide Freedom Day rally in Melbourne, they actually retreated from the protest. They didn't move in and pepper spray and make arrests for a change. During that dark period in the second half of 2020 in Victoria, one of the lockdown dissenters who attracted the ire of Dan Andrews, Victoria Police, the mainstream media and social media commenters was Eve Black, after a video of herself talking her way through a Melbourne Ring of Steel police checkpoint went viral. Victoria Police ended up hunting her down, to find her and smashed her car window in the process. Since that time, she has quietly transformed her life as she documents on her Telegram channel, and she joined me earlier today for a featured interview, which I'll play for you now, and I'll return live to bring you the rest of the day's non-COVID related news and to wrap up the show.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the unshackled.net.
Eve, welcome back to WilmsFront.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
Now, you're one of the Victorians who, after being trapped in our police state lockdown for so long, has been part of the mass migration out and up north, setting up a new life in southeast Queensland. What cultural differences have you noticed between the two states? Obviously, they've had different restrictions for so long, but there's, as we've noticed over the past year, distinct cultures between the various states.
As in, like, regardless of the whole situation, I would say that cultural differences are, and this is something that I have observed before, people in Queensland or even just sunnier parts of Australia are definitely a lot happier, and that's definitely the case up here, very observable. And of course, with the restrictions having been eased here for so long, there is a sense of normality up here. And then sometimes I do see the odd passerby walking, with a mask, and they look very, very serious. Maybe I'm just taking my imagination too far, but it would appear that they almost look like disgruntled at all the other people not wearing a mask. But people seem to be happy here, and yeah, no one really mentions COVID-19.
And what about because obviously every state now has their contact tracing or QR code check-ins. How is that enforced by the venues? Is it?
It doesn't appear to be enforced too seriously. Yeah, I certainly don't take it very seriously. You can decipher whatever it is that means for you, but yeah, I mean, some people actually, like, I overhear people saying, like, oh, should we check in? Like, even just walking past places, some people are really staying onto it. I mean, whatever, if that helps you sleep at night. But the general attitude towards it is, I would say, oh, yeah, like, whatever, do it. But then there's also a lot of people who are just like, ugh, this is, like, pointless and silly. And a lot of people, they actually completely avoid it. Like, they really make an effort to go around it and make sure that they're not checking in. But yeah, it's not taken as seriously, that's for sure.
Did you get stuck in that snap 3-day lockdown that the greater Brisbane area endured in January?
No, fortunately, I did not. I was travelling around northern New South Wales at that point. Yeah, just around New South Wales in general. So no, but friends of mine were, and even the friends of mine that were left Brisbane for the weekend, they were like, see ya, I'm out.
Yeah, because there was no ring of steel that they put up in the 9 hours notice. That's the only time that an area of Queensland was forced to be masked up, which most notably if you're driving solo in your car, which that even topped Dan's mask rules.
It's laughable, isn't it?
Like here in Victoria, the mask rules have been slowly relaxed. Friday night is when everyone can ditch them in retail settings. So a lot of people have already taken it upon themselves to ditch there. I think the main impact of that is most of the mask Karens or the ones that you experience there will have lost all their power and authority. They'll just
yeah.
be in their masks, just frowning at all the people who are no longer wearing them.
Yeah, it really did seem that was going on a long time in Victoria. On my recent visit down there, I was down there for the New Year period. And it was actually just like, it felt so foreign just because I'd been out of the state for such a long time. And it was really weird to be there and observing people like wearing their masks and still taking it quite seriously. And me, I mean, I think I wore a mask maybe on like 1 or 2 occasions. I can't even remember exactly what it was, but I definitely never took it seriously. And I obviously thought the whole thing was laughable, and I hadn't been wearing a mask. Being in the shopping centres and just public spaces, indoor public spaces, when that was the situation in Victoria, it was a very different energy to how it had been up in the sunnier states. I'm glad, obviously, for Victorians that that's not going to be the case anymore, but I can't believe that people have even stuck to it that long anyway. I didn't get approached by a single person, no police officer, and people would recognise me. They would stare. Like, if I wear my Kubra hat, people know who I am. People pointing and laughing and that type of thing. But it's amazing to me just how many people will do it because they're just afraid, like, oh, I don't want to cause trouble, this and that. But, I mean, good for you guys down there in Victoria. I'm glad that that's the case. But if people are sitting around waiting for Big Daddy to tell them whether or not it's okay to wear a mask, it just tells me that they're just going to be sitting there waiting to be told what to do next, and they'll just gladly accept it without thinking to challenge it.
And that seems to be how most people think. They just wait until They just follow it and think that, well, if it's being mandated by the government, it's for our own good. We've got to respect the law on that. But I've noticed since the announcement was made on Tuesday, I don't know why it's coming into effect 6 p.m. Friday. That's really weird. So you're at, Chadstone Shopping Centre. It's 5:59. You have to wear a mask, and then the clock ticks over to 6, and everyone in the shopping centre can take it off.
Another thing of jump, and then how high? It's like, you're going to do exactly what we say, and it's down to the minute. It's like, at this time it's okay, but any time before that it's not. It's actually it's embarrassing for people who actually choose to follow it, because they're just little puppets. So maybe that's just like, if I were the one putting such things into power, I'd be having a laugh about it, like, oh, look what I can make the stupid people do.
Yeah, that's definitely the most alarming thing, that no matter how draconian the measure that a government introduced, such as in Brisbane, driving solo, you had to wear a mask, people comply with that. But I've noticed since the announcement, a lot of Victorians are like, yeah, can't wait to take it off, breathe again. Yeah, never really liked them anyway.
Oh gosh, it's just I see it as entertainment now, honestly, because at least up here in sunny Queensland, there's not really so much of that happening anyway. And then when I do see people complying and but we still have to social distance, there's so few of those people that, for me at least, I can be able to laugh at it now, because those people, at least up here, are the minority. And that's not because they're the minority in the sense that all the other people up here would also resist and choose to not wear a mask. It's just because at the moment such things aren't being mandated like they are down there till 6 p.m. on Friday.
And I also think the novelty of wearing a mask, thinking that you're saving lives, has worn off. And that was certainly, when the mask mandate first came into effect, first in Greater Melbourne, then all of Victoria. I was never a fan of it, neither were you. Everyone was like, well, there's all these people falling ill with COVID. We just have to wear a mask and we're saving lives. That's,
oh gosh,
I know.
Signaling.
Yes, and it's still, because there's still lots of hundreds of thousands of COVID cases overseas every day. There's still, even a year on, despite the livelihoods that it's destroyed, the stay home, save lives mantra, which just seems like the ultimate NPC line. Like, if you're still saying that a year on.
Yeah. Oh, it is exactly that. It's NPC, like state of mind. Yeah. It's just virtue signaling, and I guess people need something to feel good about with their lives, and they're too scared to actually go out and think for themselves. So it's like, oh, well, the powers that be are saying to do this, and this makes me a good little guy. So I'll do that. It's just so silly.
And when you learnt that Dan had fallen down the stairs and broken his ribs and fractured his vertebrae, what was your initial reaction?
Okay, so that's only the second time that I've heard about it. The first time was, I don't even fully know what it was.
Well, none of us really do. We were told that, or he told us that he slipped on some wet stairs on his way to work and tumbled down.
Just gave him, I think someone probably just gave him what he had coming, and that's just his cover story. I don't know. Look, I mean, I don't actually wish physical harm onto him. I just wish he'd not be in a position of power. I'm trying to be diplomatic, and I'm trying to change my life for Jesus. So don't make me say something aggressive, because I'm trying to be better.
Well, let's turn to that now, because you haven't just moved your life up north. You've changed your life and your lifestyle. You're no longer an erotic dancer. You've turned to God, and you've been staying at a convent. Now, I'm not religious, so you'll have to explain to me what a convent is.
Okay, I just want to clarify. It's amazing to me how people can find out one thing and then all of a sudden turn it into this whole other thing. It's like jumping to conclusions. Like, here's a step, and then there's like, they just jump all the way to here rather than like going here, like there. So I stayed in a convent. I don't live in a convent. I don't intend to live in a convent. That's not where my life is. But a convent, I will clarify, is where nuns live. So I was staying in an Orthodox convent, Russian Orthodox convent down in the Snowy Mountains of New South Wales. And it was by recommendation of one of my Orthodox priests, who is close with the clergy there. And it was just a really amazing time for me. There's hardly any phone reception out there, so it's really easy to just switch off and drop away from everything that's happening in the outside world. And I think, religious or not, that is good for absolutely anybody, because so many people, including myself, we're all nature deficient, really. So it was really wonderful to just be out in the bush. I actually grew up in that area, in a small town only 40 minutes away. A lot of my childhood was spent growing up there, rather. So it was just a really peaceful and quiet time for me to spend time around women who are obviously close to God, learn how to be a better woman, a more godly woman, and read. Lots of reading, going down to the river, obviously lots of church. There's a little chapel at the convent, and then there's also the men's monastery, which has, of course, monks, which is just on a couple of blocks over. And it was just a really fabulous time, and I'm really excited to go back. In fact, I am going to be going back for Orthodox Easter, Pascha, which falls on my birthday.
You definitely make it sound so lovely and peaceful, and especially us Victorians have been cooped up for so much of this year. Just being out in remote nature, because this is what we've forgotten about this whole time, that Australia, it's so large, there's so much to see, there's so much beauty in it. Obviously, the weather and politics have been a bit ugly the past week, but yeah, there's so much more outside four walls.
Oh, definitely. And I've really been enjoying doing that with the, oh gosh, I hate how it sounds, like with the freedom that I have. It's like, this is the freedom that we all have. And I feel like, people are feeling like they're grateful that their freedoms are being given back. It's like, well, hang on, these are our God-given freedoms. These are our birthrights, and we're all of a sudden grateful about it. Like, I saw Gladys Berejiklian. Is that right?
Premier of New South Wales.
Yeah.
You pronounced it right.
Yeah, cool. So she made an announcement and it popped up on my YouTube suggestions about easing of restrictions in New South Wales. And for a moment, I mean, I'm based in Queensland now, obviously, but even for a moment, I found myself thinking like, oh, like this is great. Oh, she's such a good woman. I'm like, okay, like I don't know enough about her to criticize or critique or anything, but for a moment I was like praising her, being like, see, this is what everyone else needs to do. She's so wonderful. She's so great. It's like, why did this happen to begin with? Like, we're celebrating for getting our freedoms back, but they never should have been stripped from us anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get exactly what you mean. That freedom shouldn't come from government. It comes, well, you as a Christian.
Innate.
It comes from God.
Yeah. I mean, like for a non-Christian, whatever you might want to call it. I mean, unless you're an atheist, I don't know. But like, whatever you want to call it, what's created us, it's like that's where our freedom comes from. Yeah.
Now, your virtual court appearance at the Melbourne Magistrate's Court over allegedly refusing to give your name and address to Victoria Police when they smashed your car window in Carlton back in late July, that again attracted the attention of the mainstream media and led to a new round of social media chatter about you and your checkpoint crossing. I know that I noticed in my YouTube studio a few more comments pop up on our previous chat back in September. Now,
oh gosh, what they have to say?
How irresponsible you were and fame hungry, not considerate of the people who suffered with COVID. So it's basically a rerun of the online rages against you back at that
they're
time.
Just milking it, Tim.
So I remember you said that. Well, I'm not sure. I can't remember if you said that you received a fine in the mail. That's what the news article said.
Yeah. So I for a while they were saying like, oh, Eve Black is facing up to $10,000 in fines. So I can't remember when that was around, like when we spoke the first time, but I did end up receiving a fine, and it was for $1,650 whatever dollars. And so I said obviously that I wanted to contest it, and then as a result of that, I sent off some paperwork, which they completely like dismissed and all that kind of thing. And then it was so funny. Cops rocked up to me to hand me over a summons to court. Anyway, so I received the summons and I looked through the charge sheet and the statements and everything that were on there, and it was actually laughable.
When did they give this summons? Because I remember at the time of the window smashing, Victoria Police said you'd been charged on summons, but you hadn't received the summons when we last spoke.
Right. So I received the summons. I wouldn't be able to tell you the exact date unless I went and actually got the papers myself right now. But it was sometime in September. And then, it said that the court date was for the 23rd of March. So yesterday. So on the piece of paper, it was weird because it's like the fine was originally sent saying that I'd breached restrictions, so that I was traveling when I wasn't supposed to be traveling. But then the actual charge sheet for the summons to court said that the charges were for failing to produce identification and license, and that when I did produce my identification, that I gave false name and address. Like, that's what they're trying to charge me for, but the fine was for breaching COVID restrictions. So not only are those things incongruent, but on top of that, there were 4 statements in the summons that were provided by the officers who were around there on the day. 2 of the attending officers were the ones that I interacted with. The other 2 were surrounding where I was staying and verifying that it was me leaving the building when I did. Now, the two attending officers who I spoke with, the ones that arrested me, they wrote in their statements that I gave my name and address. No part of their statement at all says that I lied or gave incorrect information. So it doesn't make any sense, for one thing. And then a laughable clerical error, which is that they called me a male. So there's that too. It's like, are you really looking at this paperwork? Like, are you these statements and this charge and a summons to court is supposed to be written under oath, no? Like, they're supposed to know what they're talking about. Like, this is supposed to be like a legal document. And now they're trying to charge me for something which not only did I not commit, but they also wrote in their statements did not happen. That's perjury, trying to charge me for something which didn't happen. So that's what actually went down with yesterday's court appearance. My legal advisor and I just told them that I can't plead guilty or not guilty to something that did not happen.
And this is what the mainstream media report. If I go to the Seven News One, it lists that it was written by Karen Sweeney of AAP. So it was a virtual court appearance. I'm not sure how these sort of things work, whether you can see if there's journalists on the call.
Right. So the way that happened was I was fully prepared to be on camera, but when I spoke to the registrar on the phone from the Magistrate's court in the morning, she said that you do not need to appear on camera. So I was like, you know what, like, I don't want to, give them more material to take a picture with, and they'd probably like film the entire thing and then just get my face at one moment where it was like looking.
I still don't. I think because it's still a court of law, they can't use photos from that.
Right, you're quite possibly correct. Yeah, I just didn't even want to, need to. Like, there's no point. I don't need to have the camera on. I don't need to be seen for the interaction, so I have no use for it. But that kind of runs contrary to what everyone thinks, which is that, oh, Eve, she wants the attention. No, I don't. But anyway, so no, the camera was not on. There were quite a few attendees in the virtual courtroom. When I did speak to the registrar on the phone a couple of weeks prior, I was calling to wonder about how I would make it happen online. And then when she said that you can do it online, I was like, oh, this is great. So does that mean that no media personnel will be able to actually participate because it's not going to be in a physical courtroom? Like, someone can't just walk into the courtroom like they would any other situation. And she said, no, actually, anybody who desires to have the link can have the link. So I was like, oh, great. So there was probably about up to 15 other users who were in the virtual courtroom.
Wow.
Only a couple of them had visual. So yeah, it was definitely the media. The one media person who did speak out was requesting for consent from the magistrate, said that they were from ABC News and that they wanted access to the files because they believe that this should be public knowledge. My legal advisor then said that we wanted to keep the matter private. And then, of course, because, they're paid off, they're all on the same team, blah, 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 the magistrate said, no, I do think it's important that the public know this.
Well, let's turn to your legal advisor, and he was known as Zev Secured Party Creditor.
They got that wrong. It's Zev. No, not you. Zev. They got it wrong.
And they described your appearance as bizarre and made reference to Zev's parrot that made noises during the court appearance. And well, the article gives the vibe that Zev is a legal kook who doesn't really know what he's talking about.
Right, when really he actually just tore them a new one because he knew exactly what he was talking about. I remember when I first actually the second time I spoke to the registrar on the phone, which was on the morning of, so yesterday, and I asked to clarify, will I be able to have a representative on my behalf to speak with when I am in the virtual courtroom. And she said, as long as it's like a lawyer. And I was like, okay, well, my person has obviously history in a legal capacity, but is not formally recognised as a lawyer by what you would consider like government Australian standards.
The article
right?
says he's a paralegal.
Yeah. So, but he obviously knew the right things to say to dismiss what it is that they said, because they said, oh, no, you can only have a lawyer represent you, which is obviously not correct. He knew exactly what he needed to say, and he did it so well, but, you know, they wouldn't advertise that. He delivered so well, and I was so proud and glad to be having him on my side representing me. He just did so phenomenally well. He was using terminology that they didn't recognize because they don't even understand the system to the extent that he does. They only understand the system as they have been taught it. But he did phenomenally well. And they do the parrot thing because they want to embarrass him. He's pet sitting for somebody. So the parrot happened to make a squawking noise in the background. And of course he said, sorry, that was my parrot. Behind the camera, I was like, like when he said that, not because there's anything wrong with like the parrot. I mean, like obviously it's not ideal that the parrot made a squawking noise in that situation, but it's more that he said, sorry, that's my parrot, because I know that that's just ammunition for them. Like if they didn't have the whole parrot thing, what would their main angle have been? They used the words bizarre to basically discredit anything.
Well, there's this here where it describes, well, it states that Zev asked the magistrate to grant a plea in abatement, which could allow the matter to be discharged. And the magistrate has said that was something that it wasn't something that existed in the court, and said it seemed as if Black wanted to plead not guilty. So they've said that.
But how is that? See, it's just incorrect, because what Zev requested is exactly what ended up going ahead. Because how can you get somebody to plead guilty or not guilty to something that did not happen? It's not relevant to the situation at all. So I can't plead guilty or not guilty to something that didn't happen.
Yeah, as you stated before, but that you didn't provide false or misleading information. But from what you've described to me initially about when the police smashed your car window, because you didn't provide your name and address instantly, that seems to be enough for them to charge you with refusing to give a name and address because you didn't state it right away. And obviously there was a massive target on you at the time where they wanted to throw in this. Do you know what the penalty is if you're found guilty of this offence?
No, and you know what? And the police officer, the informant, he was present for the virtual court session, and he didn't have a thing to say. Not a thing to say. It's embarrassing for them. It is absolutely embarrassing. All he said actually was, I'd like to confirm that Miss Limbiriu is actually consenting of this person to represent her. So then I said, yes, I do consent for Zev to be my legal representative. That was it. He didn't open his mouth.
I'm not sure if you've been keeping up, but it's been revealed that there's close to 40,000 fines being issued by Victoria Police during the course of the pandemic state of emergency. There's an apparent backlog of 3 years, but yet they're adding this charge to your fine, which obviously clogs up the justice system further, because the article states your next court appearance isn't until July the 1st. So that's incredibly slow justice.
Yeah, yes, it is. And it's actually the amount of time and energy that is being dedicated into persecuting me is far beyond the the amount of money that they would receive, like as in the energy exchange that would be received by me paying the fine. So if the fine is $1,652, so much more than $1,652 worth of time, energy, and resources has gone into persecuting me. But that's because it is not about the money, at least in my case. It is about destroying me personally, so that also it intimidates other people into cooperating.
Victoria Police, they're hesitant to disclose how many fines they've had to withdraw for obvious reasons. Yes, exactly. And well, there's, as I said, there's a huge existing backlog that they have to deal with, but they maintain that they're going to go after all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what I can say to that other than, yeah, of course, I'd be embarrassed too.
Now, as you've mentioned, you don't pay that much attention to the news cycle, or you never really did before you became
Correct.
in the news cycle. But with the Australian Parliament House sex scandals, the allegations of sexual misconduct and assault, it's triggered a lot of conversations about the treatment of women in the workplace and women's safety in publics. You worked in arguably the most sexualized workplace for many years, and last year when your checkpoint video went viral, you experienced much gendered and sexualized online abuse. So what's your opinion on this latest Me Too movement, or I call it Me Too 2.0?
Well, I think that I've come to a point where I see just how very wrong I was for being in that industry. So while I don't think that it was right to condemn me based on that, like I was going to say me having done that job doesn't necessarily discredit my opinion, but at the same time, I've come to a point now where I see that, well, certain people, depending on how they live their lives, yes, I would say that it does give you an indication as to whether or not they're of sound mind. It's obviously not, a firm principle to go by, because of course I still stand by my actions and defending our freedoms, but I was clearly not in sound mind and not in a good place as a woman, because a woman's place is not in a strip club nor in the workforce, period, to be honest. I don't think that women should be in the workforce. And you might be like, oh, well, it's not the 1940s anymore, but I think the 1940s is where I'd actually like to go back to. So I do condemn that industry. And of course I condemn the persecution of people just because of their sexual behavior, but I think that needs to be taken into consideration. And I condemn promiscuity from both men and women. I don't think that this is just a woman-only problem. So calling someone a slut might sound like a really horrible thing to do. And yeah, sure, it's mean, but people need to be called out if they're behaving promiscuously, because I don't believe that that's a very good way to conduct yourself, man or woman.
Now that you've mentioned that, which there's also been a lot of talk about, why is this situation still an issue in 2020? And there's been a lot of talk about the porn culture, how easily accessible porn is, how it desensitizes particularly a lot of young people to, I don't think heinous is the right word, but quite, you would say quite unpleasant sexual acts.
Yeah, I mean, I entirely condemn the porn industry. It's absolutely messed up. I'm a big supporter of the idea that porn should be completely abolished. It's dangerous in so many ways, not just because it obviously affects the psyche, the developing psyche of a young person who has access to that type of thing, but also like the means in which porn is available just online, anywhere, free. We don't know the sources of such things. Like maybe people have like what would be like a rape fantasy thing that's like you search for that type of thing on like Pornhub or whatever it is, like there is no way for people to know whether or not that was actually a real, like they're actors who are doing that, or that's actually a real case of gang rape or whatever it is. Like,
well, you'd hope it would be actors that,
right, but it's actually,
despite
there's been several cases.
despite the artistic representation, you hope that it's all consensual.
Right, and that's just not the case. So at what point can we say it's like, oh, well, it's fine because, you know, the acting appears to be real? Like that shouldn't even need to come into question. It's just, it is dirty, it is an abomination, it is filth, and I absolutely condemn it. And this is not just because Jesus told me so. From a very objective perspective, I can see that porn, promiscuity, it is incredibly damaging for the soul, and it is just no good. I know pagans who are in the traditionalist movement, so obviously not Christian, and they're big on the no fap and you know, abolish porn and all that type of thing. It's a means to control the masses, and it basically subdues men into being compliant, sex-driven, sex-addicted men, boys that basically worship the pussy, and they're slaves to it, and it's disgusting because it's turning men into weak little cucks.
And the other issue I mentioned is women's safety. I'm not sure if how you feel when you go out at night, not for, say, like to a restaurant or something at night, but say if you're just ducking down to the 7-Eleven for milk and bread at 11 o'clock at night. There's been it's been circulated that women use their, clench their keys as like makeshift weapons for self-defense. Is that something you've ever done? Describe your...
Definitely, it's absolutely something that I've done. At the same time, I think, like, excuse me, I think that women are also going out and doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. So I'm not saying that, you know, going out and dressing like a whore and being out at 2 o'clock in the morning makes it justified for things to happen to you. But you've also got to think about what's your role that you're playing in such things. So obviously that's there's a stark contrast between that and going out to get milk and bread from the 7-Eleven. And the point is that anything can happen at any time. So I don't think it's a case of, oh, well, men just need to learn to not whatever. It's like women as well. I think everybody can be probably playing a part. It's a really it's a tricky topic, and I would say that I've got some incredibly conservative, very traditional, seemingly alt-right wing perspectives on things that I would say could cause too much of a stir if I went into too much depth. But I will say that yes, my views are what people would consider archaic, and I think that before, in those times when things were archaic, there was a lot less problems with the world. I'll leave it at that and say that it's a joint effort.
I think there were those sort of problems back, 80 years ago, but it was kept all secret back then. There's definitely, women are much more empowered these days to speak up about sexual harassment and assault. The fact that we're hearing such stories back in 80 years ago, that was never, it was never spoken about at all. But with regard to, as if you say that a woman should take precautions at night, you're called victim blaming, excusing rape culture. But obviously, like, I've been campaigning against lockdowns for the whole year. Like, you should be able to leave your home at any time, including 2 a.m, to do whatever you want. But unfortunately, throughout history, there are monsters.
That's not the world that we live in. You can't do whatever it is that you want to do. You can't go and, you know, walk around in a thong and then not be called slut and be like, oh, I demand respect. Well, you don't get respect because you're like, it's not a perfect world. That's not the world that we live in. So you've got to live according to the circumstances, not according to your ideology. And I will wear the fact that I have been that person. So yes, I deserve to be slut shamed for my past because I was being a freaking hoe. I'm not proud of my past. I'm proud of how far I've come. Absolutely. But I own that. And yes, I condemn it. I think that women need to not be so naive and to think, well, I'm a woman and I'm empowered. Well, you're not empowered because you're dressing like a slut, and you're not empowered because you're, going and fornicating with like however many men you want to. It's like, no, you're going to wind up alone with cats and unhappy, and you'll be like, oh, I'm a feminist. Wondering why men don't like you.
That was quite a brutal assessment, but as you said, you speak from experience.
Yeah, I've been an empowered woman. It doesn't get you anywhere, and it's like, oh well, my experience can't speak to absolutely everybody's. I've met a lot of people. I've worked in a sick and twisted industry for 8 years. I'm 28, nearly 29 years old, and I've seen a lot in those years. These women aren't empowered. They're sad and they're insecure.
Now, I want to ask you, because, 6 months after we spoke, Australia, including Victoria, is thankfully a much freer place. We have no current state border restrictions, and the question around the COVID pandemic in Australia has turned to Australia's vaccine rollout. Now it's starting to surge now with the local AstraZeneca vaccine being distributed to what is known as Priority Group 1B, which is those over 70 and those with pre-existing medical conditions. I'm not sure how close. I'm not sure how closely you've been following the developments on the vaccine front, but there's obviously been lots of reports from overseas of significant side effects, even death. You don't have to worry about being coerced into taking the vaccine for quite some time. Neither do I, but what are your thoughts on what you've heard about the vaccine so far?
Well, like you said, rollout for the priority demographic, being the older ones, being the ones that don't contribute to the system anymore financially. They cannot be taxed. Instead, they are what you would consider like a burden to the system. So yeah, of course they're a priority to vaccinate because they're a priority to basically eradicate. Because they don't bring in any more money.
You're implying that there's a sinister malice behind the vaccine rollout.
Absolutely, I am. Yes, most certainly. I mean, how can something that gives a recommendation that for women who are planning to conceive do not take the vaccine? It's like, well, hang on, isn't that kind of dangerous? Like, what's in that? There's certain precautions that are going out saying like, oh, well, you shouldn't have it if, and then it's like, well, this is a problem. Why aren't people talking about that? And then it's really sad because you see tweets that end up going viral, right? People being like, oh, I'm so tired of all you Karen anti-vaxxers saying that you won't get the vaccine. I just had the vaccine and then I feel fine. And then, they say 3-4 days later, oh, my 6-week-old baby, they were pregnant, is dead.
Yeah, those are heartbreaking tweets.
It's tragic.
And you wonder that basically having this vaccine for propaganda, like, how can it be worth sacrificing your child, which is what has resulted? Yeah,
I mean, like, I can't even believe it's like, it's massive. What's the word that I'm looking for? I'm having a mental blank. But basically they're just like, they're not able to see past like what's happening there and be like, make the connection that it's like, well, maybe these things are linked. There's like cognitive dissonance. That's the term I was looking for. There's massive cognitive dissonance around it. It's like, oh, but that wouldn't be from a vaccine because vaccines are proven safe. Yeah, by who?
Oh, well, it's people would argue that the ultimate person demonstrating cognitive dissonance is the federal health minister, Greg Hunt, who 2 days after getting his AstraZeneca vaccine got cellulitis, but he and his doctors were convinced nothing to do with the vaccine, and he was back at work the next week defending the AstraZeneca vaccine, despite a lot of European nations suspending its rollout.
Yeah. I mean, whether that's cognitive dissonance or like just being aware but going ahead with the coercion plan, depends how far down the rabbit hole we go, but I'd like to not go too far.
Yeah, well, because this is on YouTube, so we've got to keep it well. Make sure we know what's implied, but not be too explicit.
I think the right people know. The right people know.
Now, what are your plans for the rest of 2021? Have you? I'm not sure if you've connected with the freedom movement up in southeast Queensland. I know that another Victorian, James Bartolo, has also migrated up there. He also went viral over here. So you have you have connected with him, and I know that up there's the People's Revolution. That's the main pro-freedom group.
Yeah, I haven't actually connected with the freedom community up here. I've just been trying to stay away from anything that could grant me any more publicity. I don't, like I said, it's not like I actually want that kind of attention from the media. I mean, obviously we're sitting here doing an interview, but I'd like to set my story straight. This isn't going to be broadcast for the millions, you know. It'd be great if it was, actually, because then people could know the truth. But yeah, I don't, put it this way, I definitely don't want the negative attention. Of course, I don't want that. I don't want to be, you know, have people coming up to me and like asking me questions, you know, oh, what's happening next? Or like, what can you lead us and do this? Like, I had so many people messaging me saying like, oh, can you please share this? You're a figurehead, you're an influencer in this. I don't want to be that. I do not want to be that person. I'm not interested in being a leader, at least not right now. Like, I'm still reading and learning so much. And I would say that my energy has actually been more focused on the things politically that are happening behind what's happening now, that shows that this is actually all a plan that's been orchestrated and putting into place. So looking at certain political figures and demographics and stuff that contribute to the situation. I know that that's very, very ambiguous, what I'm saying, but I think for my own well-being, I need to remain ambiguous. But I've been doing a lot of investigating as to, yeah, the powers that be. I'll say that. And so because of that, I think that finding that out has made me realize that fighting for our freedoms is really great. We need people doing that, but I actually want to see a little bit more deeply who's really behind all of what's happening in the world. So yeah, that's where I'm focusing my energy instead.
There's still a lot to unfold with this pandemic and the vaccine rollout for the rest of 2021. There's no guarantee that anything will ever be like not the old normal, because the old normal, there was still a lot of crackdowns on freedom and free speech, but there definitely was a time, the old normal, that was really good.
Yeah, when was that? I think I was only a baby when that was still the case, because I'm born in 92, so.
Well, it was the end of the first incarnation of communism, the late 80s, early 90s. So, yes, that was a good time.
Yeah. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, like, I'm not on technically, I guess it is social media, but I'm not on the conventional platforms of social media, being Telegram, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, that type of thing. But I am on Telegram, and I'm in some what you might consider rather controversial online places. It's very fun. The right wing makes some good memes, but I've noticed that even on Telegram, things are getting censored because they don't want the truth out there.
Oh, that's Apple and Google on the apps because obviously Telegram, more people are discovering it because it's in the app stores, but the sacrifice is that certain content is not allowed to be on there.
Yeah, which is not really right. Freedom of information. And it's not just like Apple and Google. Like, I don't know if they've actually done that to the point where they've made it undownloadable so that you can't find it. Actually, no, that's not the case, because I asked a friend of mine to download Telegram the other day.
Yeah, but they obviously, Gab was the first to be kicked off the app stores, and then after the storming of the US Capitol, they kicked Parler off. So, but Telegram still continues to survive.
Well, when I say the censorship on Telegram, I don't necessarily mean that they've made the app entirely inaccessible. I mean that certain pages have been shut down.
Oh yes, that's definitely the case. You get that message, this isn't accessible on this app, and so you have to go to the desktop version of that to see what's all that about.
Yeah, but actually just channels, like an entire Telegram channel with potentially thousands of subscribers, gone, nuked.
I haven't come across any of those channels.
Yeah, I'm in a few of those.
Well, it's been great to catch up with you, and well, I'm glad I was able to give you the opportunity to set the recent reporting straight and give us an update on how you've been doing, how you've been living this past 6 months, and well, let's hope that things at least slowly improve. They get slightly less crap. Let's put it like that.
Praying for it.
Take care.
Thanks for having me, Tim. And I'd just like to say that anyone out there, I know that I was previously promoting my Instagram. At the very least, for the moment, I've taken time off of that. It's completely deactivated, not using it. Don't have the intention to go back on anytime soon. But for the period of Lent, I'm off social media entirely, so I'm not using my Telegram channel, but I do have a Telegram channel. Sorry, it's not going to be crazy. I don't want to get deleted or anything on there, but I am posting content and just sharing stuff on there. If anyone wants to find me on there, it's TheEveeOlution. If anyone wants to find me on Telegram, that's my channel on there.
I'll provide a link to it in the description so people can find you after.
Yeah, cool. Well, Tim, thank you so much for having me. I feel good about being able to set the story straight and expand on a few other things. I feel like I want to say that I don't want to need to come back on and set the story straight again, but they seem to like coming after me, so who knows? Maybe I'll need to.
Well, we'll see. Your next court appearance is in July. We'll see if there's any more legal and media shenanigans.
Probably will be.
All the best.
Thanks, Tim. You too. Cheers.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by theunshackled.net.
And we're back live, so I hope you enjoyed my conversation and catch up with Eve. Now, as I promised before, I'm going to finish the show by wrapping up the non-COVID related news. And well, before the era of COVID, you remember the Extinction Rebellion protest groups who are known for their way of convincing the public of their cause or message of doom was blocking peak hour traffic, inconveniencing commuters. Well, they've back all around the world blocking traffic and supergluing themselves to roads. And Australian cities are no different. So they've been out in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth. Now, over in Perth, one of the most notable patriots over there, Dennis Hutz, he has no time for the leftist disruptors all throughout his city, and he was driving in the peak hour traffic and encountered them blocking the road, and what happened next was captured by the local 9 News Perth.
Good evening. A former leader of the United Patriots Front has turned the tables on Perth climate protesters, ripping down a banner before being wrestled to the ground by police. The confrontation happened in front of our cameras, and tonight the man is claiming officers were heavy-handed.
Stopped at a set of traffic lights, this man sees red over a non-violent protest, ripping into their message.
Get out of my way. Why don't you deal with this?
That man is Dennis Hutz, the former head of the Perth chapter of the United Patriots Front. No stranger to protests, involved in past anti-Islamic stunts.
I've been involved in activism myself, conservative activism, so I support all of that. What I don't support is people stopping other people from going about their lawful business.
12 Extinction Rebellion members were standing in the middle of the road at a red light under the careful eye of police.
I was worried he was going to hit me. He was kind of walking towards me.
Officers instantly pouncing on the 52-year-old and moving his car. During the arrest, one officer suffering a serious knee injury. Dennis Hutz charged with common assault, obstructing officers and disorderly behaviour.
Totally over the top. They told me that I was getting done for assault for grabbing the banner, not for touching anyone.
Extinction Rebellion promised arrests of their own, and they delivered. Performing another demonstration where they pretend to die, frustrating bystanders.
If you want to do a campaign, do it properly. You don't need to hold up traffic.
This is day 2 or 3 of Extinction Rebellion's planned protests around WA and the country. But with little change coming out of this type of action, the question remains, how much more of this will we see? 2 protesters were arrested today on top of yesterday's 27 arrests, and they say they'll be back somewhere in Perth again tomorrow. Michael Stamp, 9 News.
Now, as you saw in that footage there, the Western Australian police, they were just sitting back until Dennis got out of his car, and he's been charged with common assault. It doesn't look like he damaged the sign, but took it out of their hands, and then all the police all of a sudden come out of nowhere to tackle and arrest him, and they claim that he's resisted arrest. That doesn't look like resisting arrest to me, but they've decided to throw the book at him, not the Extinction Rebellion protesters who were blocking the road there. So as Dennis said himself, that's way over the top, and well, we'll see how this pans out eventually. As the 9 News report alluded to, Dennis has engaged in lots of colourful activism over his time in Perth. Currently, he is suing Network 10 over, they called him a white supremacist when he unfurled at the Optus Stadium a cricket match. It's okay to be white banner. So that's ongoing as well. But as you can see there, Dennis, he doesn't hold back. He doesn't cop crap. Now, going back to Victoria briefly, as I mentioned, we're now COVID-free. There's no active cases at all, but there's actually another virus that is going around Melbourne. It is known as, I'll just bring it up here. It's called RSV. So it affects the elderly and children. So it's called respiratory syncytial virus. And it produces a number of the same symptoms as the common cold, including respiratory distress, runny nose, cough, and fever. and they claim that the reason why this virus is spreading is largely due to social distancing of the past year, weakening the immune system. So I'll just play this sensationalist 9 News report from Melbourne last night to explain what RSV is.
Just as Melbourne records a COVID milestone with no active cases, another virus is raging through our suburbs. It's nowhere near as serious, but it's making life miserable for many families and can be dangerous for the very young and the elderly.
The first time Kelly Conlon heard about RSV was on a note from daycare last month.
I just knew that it was like bronchiolitis, so just a respiratory infection.
An infection that left all 3 of Mrs. Conlon's children in hospital, including 4-month-old Ziggy, who ended up in intensive care.
Straight through to the resus room, they had her on high flow oxygen. She was screaming for like the entire night. You know, it was very traumatic. I honestly thought we were going to lose her.
RSV, or respiratory syncytial virus, looks a lot like the common cold. Symptoms include a runny nose, cough and fever. And it's running rampant, largely because social distancing for the past 12 months has weakened our immune systems.
Now that people, particularly kids, are back in circulation again, so are the viruses that we normally see around winter time.
The elderly are also at risk.
Chronic conditions mean that you're more susceptible to getting more sick if you have a virus that might only marginally affect a younger adult.
After a year living with COVID, Victorians know the drill when it comes to stopping the spread of a contagious virus.
So my advice would be to wash your hands often. If you are unwell, please stay home. If you have sick children, please keep them home.
Georgia Love, 7 News.
So, an unintended consequence from the mass lockdown from the previous year. Now, as you know, I was ill a couple of weeks back when we had to cancel an episode of Brawler in the Brain. That was due because I did have a cold. It wasn't COVID, but it could have been this new virus, RCV. Because I had a runny and clogged nose and sore throat. So there you go. I could have been a victim of this latest pandemic. I don't know how they test if you've got this virus. I don't know if they have to do a brain swab or deep throat you or even an anal swab. But yeah, they know that it's going around. And there's also been a gastro or you'd say epidemic around Melbourne as well. So all sorts of viruses, non-COVID related, are floating around Melbourne, most likely due to our weakened immune system. Now, I'll give you a cancel culture update. The latest cancellation attempt is if I bring it up here, the Golden Gay Time, which it's not, I have to say, I don't really enjoy that ice cream. Obviously, the name in its modern context raises a few eyebrows, but obviously the Gay Time, it was ice cream founded in 1959, back when gay meant happy. So there was some lone Australian gay who goes by the name of Brian Mack, who wants to eliminate the word gay from the popular ice cream because, and this is his reasoning, as part of the LGBTIQ community, I believe my sexual identity is owned by me, and has already kickstarted a petition to get it removed. So his petition's got 800 signatures so far, which I guess in this cancel culture age is equivalent to about 800 billion signatures. And this follows last week when Woolworths, they caved into a single complaint and renamed its Boomerang Chicken Wings to V-Wings. So that only took one complaint, which I guess equals 1 billion complaints. So there has been a counter petition launched to save the Golden Gay Time, because, well, a lot of English words have multiple meanings, as does gay. Obviously, it most commonly refers to homosexual these days, but it used to mean happy. And today it also means, when people say that's so gay, they mean that's really stupid. So it's a word that has three different meanings today, but this is obviously meant in a happy sense. I guess what do they want to change it to? Golden happy time? that still sounds like a very gay name. Now, also this week, as you know, the parliamentary degenerate sex scandal has blown up even more. It prompted a emotional prime minister press conference from the Prime Minister Scott Morrison after it was revealed a group of male coalition staffers had taken photos of themselves masturbating on the desk of MPs' officers and shared them around a private Facebook group that was broadcast. Private Facebook messenger chat that was reported by Peter Van Onselen on The Project on Monday night by whistleblower Tom. But now this story has been spun. It further shows that there's a toxic masculine culture in Parliament and that it's misogynistic, mistreats women because one of their photos was on a female MP's desk. Well, there's been you wouldn't say a twist, but a more correction of the record that this group of staffers who were showing themselves masturbating on MPs' desks were actually a group of gay staffers. And then there's obviously the reports of the parliamentary prayer room being used for not just prostitutes, but rent boys as well. Now, there's been further information revealed about the actual homosexual nature of these staffers masturbating on MPs' desks from difficult nerd James Newbury on Twitter, who's been a guest on WilmsFront in the past. So he's actually said that this was a game that these gay staffers played. And I'm reading this from his Twitter account. If the MP or senator said something unreasonable about same-sex marriage, the gays on their side of the chamber would have some form of sex act in the office. The party's policy is that marriage is between a man and a woman was reasonable. The more unreasonable, the more ambitious the sex act. It was applied without fear or favor. And I think he's quoting someone else. I wasn't involved, but there is a tact of bipartisan orgy involving 12 staffers, one for each apostle, 6 Labor, 6 coalition, taking place in Cory Bernardi's office after his bestiality speech, where he said that same-sex marriage could lead to bestiality. My understanding is the lesbians did McCream or something. Anyway, it was categorically not misogynistic. It was applied without fear or favor, and it was a bit of a fuck you for saying my relationship isn't real. So I'll show you how real it is. It was about regaining some power at a time we felt powerless. Now Tom, for factional reasons, is passing off his evidence of misogyny because his career is on the ropes. I also question the wisdom of these kids taking photos. It was all meant to be on the honor system. But that's the story. Office romances applied to a political protest. Was it appropriate? God, no. Funny, though, smiley face. So there you go. That's the, you'd say the current bent that this parliamentary sex degeneracy scandal had taken on. It's actually showing the homosexual underbelly of the federal parliament. So this significantly disrupts the narrative that these were misogynistic sex acts when they were, in a way, homosexual activism sex acts. So there you go. We'll see how this plays out, this twist in the next few days. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching tonight. That's it from me for the week. There's nothing on until Sunday night when I return with Jared Searby for Brawler in the Brain, 8:30 p.m. Victorian time on the Unshackled YouTube channel. And then, of course, Trad Tasman Talk, 7 p.m. Tuesday, or 7:15 p.m. Tuesday now, I should say, Melbourne time on the Unshackled YouTube channel. And in the meantime, please check the unshackled.net for regular news and commentary, and our Unshackled Productions archive. Regular reports from Tiger Mountain by Richard Wollstonecroft are on the Unshackled YouTube channel and also archived on the unshackled.net. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week, same time, same place, for WilmsFront.
Thanks for tuning in to WilmsFront. Visit timwilms.com or Rational Rise TV to view the archive of episodes. And keep visiting theunshackled.net to view all our shows. And to keep up with the latest real news and analysis.